DMCA means rights protected? Yes. Okay, sorry, just making sure.
Music that was released by someone else.
No,
No.
we're not.
No.
We're not, and we will make sure to not play any covers because they.
Covers are good. Covers are fine.
Oh, okay. Cool.
If people are watching, you guys should grab chairs. Get comfortable.
Oh, we do
It's
have
gonna be
chairs.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be sure not to play any Run DMC music.
Why Run DMC?
That's what he said, right?
He said you can play any covers you want.
I'm just kidding.
That's kind of funny.
I'm
That
just
is funny.
kidding. You know, I played with Run DMC.
Did you?
Yeah.
What? Tell me that story.
Are we streaming yet? Okay. It's not actually anything crazy. It was at this corporate thing called Stand Together. Do you know about the Stand Together stuff?
I feel like it
Anything
sounds familiar.
It's like, yeah, it was just like I was music directing, and he was there because he made a company called Daryl Makes Cookies,
Okay.
and he's like selling the cookies, like DMC, but it's
Okay.
Daryl Makes Cookies.
That's cool.
His name's Daryl.
Yes.
And so he was there for that, but then he like got up on stage and sat in with us and did one of his songs. Like I had to listen to it right beforehand to like get the line from the song and then just play it.
That's sick.
And yeah, it went great. We were just rocking out.
Nice.
Me and Run DMC.
That's
the
awesome.
band.
Did you do it strict?
Sweet guy. I don't know. I don't remember. I don't really listen to any of his music.
Okay. It's a great song.
I imagine it probably is. He was great on stage. It was fantastic. Cool. All right. So let's calibrate because I have different levels of. This is a masterclass. We have a little in-studio audience here. I have different levels of like sort of. There are different levels to go with learning about music, and it can go from like. Let's kind of talk high-level surface,
Sure.
like figure out how we can just kind of fit into the context that makes the most sense for this moment and whatever comes out in what place.
Sure.
And then there's down to like all the theory of composition, the intricacy of harmony, the whole history of music and
Right.
diasporas of different like countries that cause different meshes of different genres and rhythms and that gets a lot more pretentious and a lot more critical, which I'm fully happy and capable of doing.
Yeah.
But so let's calibrate, like from 1 to 10 on like kind of chill jammy to like high level pretentious. Like where do you want to go
Sure.
here?
Okay, so a while ago I said to you, hey, I want to get better at improvisation. I watch you with all these jazz guys, and I'm like, how the fuck are they doing this level of improvisation? I don't know if you remember this conversation.
I do.
And you were like, yeah, like you can get in on it, and like I know what you do, and you can like ride a note or two, and I can help you do that. And then I was like, yeah, but I think it would be great to like have a lesson that's like a little bit more about like how to improvise in harmony and how I can think around it. And then as I've been thinking around this stuff and sort of the opportunity to do this with you, I was thinking about like the way that I play guitar. Because for me, I've realized, especially in the last couple of years, I've been playing guitar for 30 years. And I feel like my background is like way more rock and way less sort of jazz, but I'm really into improvisational rock stuff. And I see the guitar as shapes. So I see chords as shapes on the guitar. So like if I'm playing A major, I know what that shape looks like. And I know that if I'm gonna go from the major third to the minor, it means changing the third or the major to the minor chord. It means changing to the minor third and playing the shape that looks like. And working around that. So when I was thinking about this with you, I was like, maybe it would be like a combination of like theory and me understanding how that applies to shapes on the guitar from playing with you, from you explaining what you're doing improvisationally to me in that way, if that makes sense to you.
It makes total sense. So we can go deep on a very specific niche of improvisation that I think will be very helpful for most of the contexts that you'll be in.
Okay.
Especially in these. I'm also in my when my mind goes into the critical mode, it goes into that in all aspects. So I'm gonna also just ask that we we're training our new engineer here, Alex. So Alex, if you're doing video, or Corey, if you're helping out with video, let's make sure we get some close-ups of like faces when we're talking. Because right now there's like we're both talking, but it's a big. There we go. Even closer if the lens will denote it. But yeah, those are great shots. Beautiful. Love it. Thank you.
I also feel like you should know that I took theory, like I know basic theory stuff from taking a theory class in high school and a theory class in college,
Okay.
and playing with people, including you. And I feel like you and I have played together enough that you know sort of where I'm at. But like I also feel like I have very dumb theory questions that I've like always want to ask that
them
I
all.
love coming up.
Those
and,
are
and
ones
I
that
also
everybody
think if
has,
anybody
I
in the
promise.
audience has dumb theory questions, that this should be like a safe space to feel like, okay, let's get some of that stuff out of the way.
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
Well, and I can tell you, I think we should also go into rhythm a little bit. So let's talk about, because these are the things, because I know you also, and I know your guitar playing, and I
Right.
think that I want to just dig into the things that'll be most helpful for you. And this is a video that you'll have. You can go through this, in the future too. And I can also point you to other resources, because we're not going to have time to go through everything.
Sure.
But I think that so the way you think of shapes, we're going to do a few things here. One is dive into shapes and how it has to do with modes.
Sure. Yes.
And how that has to do with theory and movement of theory.
Yep.
Movement of harmony, like going from the 5 to the 1, basically.
Sure.
Which then turns into the entire circle of fifths. You know about the circle of fifths?
Of course. Yep.
So yeah, you can which 2-5-1, 3-6-2-5-1, etc. But it's all very simple actually. In the end, it's just a 5 to a 1, and that's what moves.
5 to a 1.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
So I mean that's like it's like Beethoven. It's it's the root of Western music is just like but then you have a 2-5-1 in jazz, and a lot of the time when you and I are improvising, if we do like a minor, it'll often be in a Dorian mode. So there are well, so there are basically 7 modes. There's actually more, but more. There's major, and they're based on each of the key. Like so, C. If we're in C, if you go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, you have 7 different ways that can sound using the same diatonic scale. Yeah, exactly. No. So what you just did was
Yep.
You did the flat 7. You want to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, which is just like whole. It's whole, half, whole, half, in terms of the steps. Yep. Nope.
Oh.
Half step
No.
up. Half step up.
But why wouldn't it be a half step up from there? So.
That's it.
I understand what I did wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
So this goes with me thinking about shapes. I was thinking about where I was thinking about the wrong string.
So this is where actually I want. So this is the perfect place to break a pattern.
Right.
So you and almost every other guitarist in the world, who has not like extensively studied like the fundamentals of music theory. When you go like I went through college and I studied all the like roots of classical and all that stuff. You have your scales and your modes, and those are predecessors to the shapes. The shapes are the results of how these modes work harmonically to make consonant and dissonant sort of chunks of sound, like 1-3, 1-3-5, 1-3-5-7, 1-3-5-7-9, 1-3-5-7-9 sharp 11, because that's actually where the harmonic series lands. It doesn't land on the natural 11 because that's dissonant, but this is consonant, but that's beyond. We don't need to go there. So let's circle back to the major scale.
So is everything you're playing right there, was that all part of a major scale?
Everything except for the last note, and that
Everything
gets to a
except for the
big
11.
whole
Okay.
complicated dichotomy and harmony, which we won't go into right
Okay.
now. But that's the major scale. I want you to first. So I'm going to give you homework assignments as we go. First homework assignment is forget about your shapes question. Learn the scales. Learn to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, then back down, and learn to do that starting from every note in a singular diatonic scale. So what that means is if we're in C, or let's do it in E, because it'll be easier for you on guitar. Right? E major.
Yeah. All right. E.
Yep.
F sharp. Yep.
G sharp.
G sharp.
A, B, C sharp, D sharp, C. Now, if you were to do that same scale, the same exact notes, and you started from F sharp, the 2, right? Start one whole step up. What do you get there? it's
F
the E
sharp.
major scale though. So
Right.
root your mind in the E major scale, but start on F.
Oh, okay. So we're talking about a mode.
So now we're in
Right.
the Dorian mode, F sharp
Okay.
Dorian.
Okay. So this is something I've always wondered about.
Yeah.
Okay. So the mode is the same notes as the E scale that we just played, right?
The mo-
Except starting with the F sharp.
Well, I want to be careful about definitions here.
Okay.
The mode itself that we just played, a mode is not its relation to a major scale. The major scale is a mode. Is it Aeolian or Ionian? I think it's Ionian is major and Aeolian is minor. But this is a mode. You can also play the Dorian mode over E, which means the 3 is flat and the 7 is flat. So you can play any of these modes over any key. It's not tied to a specific root. But the easiest way to understand what mode sounds like what, and to like put it together in a way you can practice it, is take a major scale, E, and then know that if you play an E major scale and you start on the 2, you have the Dorian mode. You know that, you hear it all the time. And then if you start on the 3, you have the Phrygian mode. It's a more rare mode.
So contextually with what we're talking about, that would be starting on G sharp, but playing the same notes that we played in the E major scale.
Exactly.
Correct? All right.
Exactly. And it sounds very dissonant because you have a flat 2 and a flat 3 and a flat 6 and a flat 7 if you were to look at it in relation to a major scale. Because if you, like, G sharp major is, right? But G sharp Phrygian is, it's very dark sound. So then we get into these metaphors, right? Light and dark. Dark meaning like you have more flat notes, and light meaning you have more sharp notes. It's really a cultural, historical thing because that doesn't actually have context over dark and light or like positive and negative. But you go one direction around the circle of fifths and you flat a bunch of the notes, and that's what we've done here with a Phrygian scale. So because I also want to make sure to like not spend too much time on this one particular part of it, I'm going to shortcut through the rest of them.
Sure.
And then you and anybody else can also look back on this and learn these exactly. But if you start on the 4, so it's thinking in E still. It's the Lydian scale, which is just an E. You're doing an E major scale, but you're starting on an A. And the only difference between that A Lydian scale and the A major scale is that your 4 is sharped. If you were to play A major, but if you play A Lydian, it's... And when you play A Lydian, you're using the same notes as the E major scale.
And would you be playing over like the same chords as you would, like let's say there was like a chord pattern underneath. You were trying to figure out what you were going to do improvisationally.
Yeah, so that comes next. That actually, you have to know these in order to figure out where you are in the first place. Because you're going to be in one of these modes. And the most important thing when you start a jam is to hear and then think, I'm in the Dorian mode, or I'm in the Lydian mode, or I'm in the Mixolydian mode. And know exactly, because when you do that, you know exactly what scale you're going to play. And then any melodies you create can be in the context of that scale. And I'll give you some examples of that in one moment. But first, let me get through the rest of the modes. So on the 5, Mixolydian. So I'm still playing an E major, but I'm starting on B.
B, right? Okay.
And the only difference between B major and B Mixolydian is the flat 7. Sorry, I just was making sure I had the names right. I haven't really gone through these names much since college. And then on the 6, it's Aeolian minor. And the 7, it's Locrian, which is really you barely ever use that because there's no it doesn't fit into the circle of fifths as a direct 5 over a 1 because there is no perfect fifth. The fifth is flatted, so you have a tritone instead of the fifth. Normally you'd have a fifth, but now you have a tritone, so there's nothing for, there's no, it's just a very unstable chord. And then you're back at the 1. So, major, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Ionian, Locrian, and I'm sorry, that was Aeolian, not Ionian. It's minor and then Locrian and then major. Those are the modes. But now, to your previous question about like what do I actually do with them and why are they important? If I started to do this, what would you do? Like, what's the first thought that goes through your mind?
I would try to find the root.
Okay, good. Good first step. And what's really good for you to do, so I trained myself in this a lot. This is one thing that people do in jam sessions a ton, that the better you get, the less you will do this, is be able to play any note just very, very subtly and know exactly where the root is in relation to that note. So if I go like this, you could pick one note random. You can't develop perfect pitch after a very young age. So, but pick one note randomly, and you can and then have relative pitch. So if you do like, okay, that note is, I know that that's the flat. That's the flat 7 of whatever key we're in. If I were to just play that very subtly, right? And then you know what your 1 is, which is G.
Right.
So now, once you can do that, and there are ways to train that. I can give you some exercises to just like train yourself to do that. But the more you practice that, the better you get at it. Then you have to know what mode you're in, right? So what would you do, like what would your next step be after you find that 1?
So I think I would obviously like listen to what the progression is first, I think. I would try to figure out what the like repeating motif is.
No. Okay. So that's not what you want to do. And it's good that we're going over this. The first thing that you want to do is get the scale that is being used in that key. So what you just did, yes, that's it. Because what you first did was you played a major chord.
Right.
Which was wrong.
Right. But it was a 7th.
That's also wrong because you have there you go.
Yeah.
It's a minor.
Yeah.
And that's so important because if I'm going like this and you're in a pro jam session and you go like, and you just play that once, everybody who knows anything that they're listening to is like, okay, this is going to be weird.
Right.
So like you want to, because you don't have to do that. You never have to play the wrong, when you have the right bass note, with a little bit of like training yourself, which you can do, and I'll give you some exercises to do this, you never have to play the wrong chord. Mm-hmm. And you never should play the wrong chord. You should know exactly what mode you're in, because really, for the most part, there's only 2 things that are the most important. It's I'm in major, or I'm in minor.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So like that. This
reminds me of one of my favorite moments of a music movie, which was the Get Back documentary with the Beatles.
Okay.
And there's a moment where you can see how much John and Paul hate each other when Paul looks at John and goes, "It's minor." Fantastic.
Totally. Yeah, it's a simple thing that with a little bit of training can get ironed out, and like, and if you really, like, it's an because if you're on a stage, especially, I mean, okay, so here's a little story. I was at the Robert Glasper show last night. It was his birthday, and he brought some people out to the living room over in Hollywood, so I went to check out the club and also to see him and give him his membership card to the recording club.
Amazing.
And they got on stage and did 2 hours of complete improvisation, and there was never a single moment in the entire. There were like up to like 8 people on stage at any given point. Horn players, like 2 trumpet players, sax player, like Christian Scott, Keon Harold, all these guys, and then and vocalists, all these great vocalists. Not a single person ever played a single note that didn't go with the rest of what was going on the entire time. And that's a pro level. Like, that's what it is on a pro level. You don't need to, ever. Like, well, not once, because you hear it. And if you play one note, like, the reason I will get on stage, and so will Herbie Hancock, by the way. He told me this himself. Like, you can get on stage, if I'm playing, and you do something like, if let's just say you happen to pick that note that you need to play super subtly to make sure that you know what key it is because you don't have perfect pitch, which I don't either. You play the major. You accidentally play a B, right? If you are malleable and you know quick enough, if your brain can then register, okay, that's the major third, this is a minor, you can immediately go, like, so let's say I do that. You know, like, you didn't notice that, right?
Right.
You didn't notice that I played the worst possible note that you can in the context of that because I quickly used it as a grace note.
Right.
To go to the minor, and then I use that as a motif, as like a descending chromatic motif, and then it made perfect sense because because I used it as a grace note, put it into a motif, and made it a phrase. And after you do that, you can do anything. You could do that you can play all the wrong notes and it still works if you if you can turn it into a clear phrase that has motivic consistency. I could do that like a half step up, right? Because I resolved it at the end, right? Like I literally started, or like in completely the wrong notes. But you can take that motif and turn it into something that makes sense in the context of it, based on what you play after it. So that's the next step. I kind of skipped ahead to that.
Sure. That also reminded me of I was in a similar situation with George Porter Jr., the bass player, and I said to him, the bass player for the Meters, and I said to him, when you do hit a wrong note, do you bend it or do you go up or down a fret? And he said, I play the wrong note 3 times and make it the right note, which is one of my favorite things I've ever heard of music.
Yeah, I know people say, I don't fully agree with that theory. Like, people do say that, and it makes sense in a way, but it's less about convincing people that you thought you were right in the first place, and more about making it into something that has musical substance to it. Because any notes can have musical substance, and we learned that through the history of classical music, like to Bartók, who took harmony and stretched it beyond its limits to the point where it was atonal, and then an entire era of atonal music came after that. Like, say, you can make music way outside the harmony that you're playing in if you understand motivic development and phrasing. So that's the next thing. That's the next part. I personally think when somebody says they just keep playing the wrong note, that's actually an excuse for not understanding motivic development and phrasing, which a lot of great musicians actually don't. Like, there are some people who have made it very, that they intuitively can play really well, but they have no idea what they're doing, and they can't explain it. Right. But you can still root it and break it down to something that they're doing intuitively that can be explained as motivic development and phrasing and melody and harmony and these roots of music that actually make sense and are helpful to understand even if you're doing it from an intuitive level. So let's take a step back, because we went into the other thing that will help you a lot, but we didn't quite get through the previous thing that will allow you to just like sit into a context and function in that context on a baseline level, without like diverting what other people are doing. And this is the thing, like when you make noise on stage, whatever you do, everybody else is listening to, and the goal is everybody's incorporating everything that everybody else is doing into what they're doing. Yeah, that's, if you're in a context of good musicians, they're listening to everybody. So whatever you play will be listened to, and we have to be conscious of that, because you also have to listen to what you're playing and then make it into something that makes musical sense. So that's what we're going to do in this first exercise of like, so I'm going to play, let's see. I do that. What's the first thing you do?
Try to figure out the key, which I think is an A.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, and so that first note that you played, I would play. Can you play it even lighter? Can you play so soft that it can barely be heard, but you can hear, but you know what note it is, and you can kind of hear it in the way background?
Yep.
All right. So let's try it again. I'm gonna pick a different key. Nice. Now what mode am I in?
I think it's major.
It's major with a twist. What's the one note that's different from major?
I don't know.
I'll
That would be the 7th. That would be different.
yeah. And what is the 7th?
So the 7th is...
Exactly. It's flat. It's flat 7. Mixolydian. Exactly. So it's got.
So what note is that in B? I'm thinking through again the shape,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
So it's this one, right?
it is that. But what I want you to do after this lesson is to get to the point where you don't need to think of the guitar shape,
Right.
and you can think of it in a purely theoretical standpoint, which it's good to look at it on a keyboard, on an
Right.
actual keyboard.
Yeah.
Um,
So that note is D. No, sorry, A.
It's A, exactly, yeah. So, okay, so yeah, now let's see. I do want to explain the shape thing to you because where shapes fit into this are kind of important. But so you get that idea, right? The idea of modes, and you get the modes. We have it recorded. You can go back and listen to it.
Yes.
So make sure you understand all of them. Make sure you can just pick it out and get it before any changes. Because then if I'm doing like, okay, so let's say, what am I in now?
C.
Nope.
G. No. What are you?
Yeah, it's G. It's G. You got it. You got it. Okay. What? Wait. Play what you just played. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Good. So now we're there, and I'm going like. Now this is what you were about to do before, which is the next step after you find the mode. Now what do you need to figure out? Like, what's going on here? What am I doing now that's different from just playing G?
You're going. I think to the. You're changing the chord. You're going to the 4.
Exactly. I'm going to the 4. Yep. Yeah. So now that's the next thing you have to figure out. What those steps we just went through, finding the root, finding the mode, and then finding the changes,
Right.
is all you need to be able to know the landscape that you're playing over. That's the first, like when you can do those 3 things, you'll be able to sit into any jam session, and depending on the complexity of it, I mean, it could be like, like
That's where I go. No.
Yeah, exactly. It gets very complicated, but the different versions of that are like the chords can change in all different directions, and there's a cycle of some sort that happens. There always is. So, learn to discern the mode, the root, the mode, and then the changes, and keep getting more familiar with the complexities of that, and like how quick you can get the root and the mode, and then how long you can get the changes to play out in your mind. Like if you can get 4 different chords that are like loosely related, it's usually not more than that amount of chords.
Right.
That's all that you need in order to get the root. Now we can deal with shapes, okay? And shapes have to do with. So let's like take a step back to the macro here, okay? Shapes are the first thing that exists in music. Everything is a color, which is synonymous with a chord, and that chord is made up by notes. And if you take that chord and break it out linearly, it's a shape. So like D Dorian. I could go like, right, 1 3 5 7. I could play that as a shape, but it's a chord. You play it simultaneously, and it's a chord. I could play 1 3 5 7 9, and then I could like move that around, or I could do like pentatonic shapes. But it's all basically just playing this chord deconstructed in different ways. So once you have your mode and you know the chords that you're over, you can take those chords and break them into shapes. And that's what will make it easy for you to have some root of vocabulary and context to play over. So like in the one we were just doing. So all I was doing there was playing some pretty basic shapes that outlined the modes that change. One bar in G, and then one bar in C. And sometimes I would fudge it a little bit and play the minor of G because you're in C and the brain is thinking linearly. It doesn't always have to be switching. You can actually kind of stay in like that vague using the 3 and the flat 3 because you're switching to the C dominant, which has the minor of the G in it. So now you try soloing over that. Play some shapes for me. Nice. Nice. Okay, cool. So I don't think we need to actually go over shapes too much because you've got the shapes over those chords are good. What I do think is lacking, and what would make a big difference in your playing to lean into, is motivic development.
Yeah. I actually feel like that. I mean, I want to discuss this, but I do think that that's something that like intuitively I end up doing a lot of is like repeating motifs when I'm in sort of like the jams that build. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, there's a difference between motivic repetition and motivic development.
Okay.
So to develop an idea, like this is the thing that separates the really good instrumentalists from like the really great instrumentalists, is when they play a nugget of sound, like let's just say that it's a shape, right? 7 1 3. That little chunk, that little nugget of sound, becomes the root of everything else that's about to go down. And it's not that they repeat it. They can. You can repeat it like let's play it again. 1 2 3 4. You know, it's fine, but it's boring. It gets boring after a while, but it sounds fine, right? It's better than if I were playing outside of that wouldn't make any sense, right? You want to do it in the key, but then after that you have a couple choices. One is you can just start to play other shapes that sound good in the key, which is what almost everybody does. Like, let's go 1 2 3 4. Right? So that sounded a little bit better than just playing that one shape over and over again. But I wasn't playing anything super meaningful. I was just sort of meandering around shapes that are familiar under my hand in that key, right? But if I wanted to take that idea and actually say something with it, this is what music is. Like, this is actually the root of music that almost nobody understands, even though a lot of people do it. You take an idea and you paint a whole beautiful canvas or landscape or whatever it is, whatever metaphor you want to use, using that idea, and it all relates back to the original idea that you're playing. It doesn't relate to the macro as a fundamental thing that makes the music great. That makes the music palatable when it relates to the macro of like meaning the mode that you're in, right? Like you can play the modes. That's the first thing you absolutely need in order to make it just tenable. But to make it really like good music, you need to take the idea and give it meaning. And the way you give it meaning is by developing it and using it to say using the later ideas to say something about the previous idea. And so like let's play a little bit, and I'll give you a little bit of an example of it, even though it's kind of hard to do in like, well, let's try it. 1, 2, So I'd give that like a 7 out of 10 in terms of actually doing what I was trying to give an example of, because it's not super easy to just dive into the moment, but that was probably discernible from the previous thing, right? Like it sounds more complex, but it's not the complexity that makes it better. It's actually the simplicity of the connections between, you know, if this is the motif, I could use that same like sort of cell. This is another thing in like contemporary classical music that you do is count the half steps. So you'd have like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So like 0, 2, 5, and then you could use that up here, or flip it upside down, and you can really move it even atonally, and it still makes sense. In kind of a fun way, like here, 1, 2, you know. So you can really take it out there if you use that same motif and move it. But anyway, I'm getting actually probably further than where we should be going in the context of this, because we're talking about how to fit in a jam session, and like do all of the basics. And there's one other basic that I haven't addressed yet that's super, super, super important, which you do naturally, but you and I and everybody in the world can always focus on this and work on this, which is the thing that is exactly as important as your ability to find a key and then get the mode and then get the changes is get the feel.
Right.
And you know, that's where like, so let's play that again, and I'll give a little example of something. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. What? Okay, yeah. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. You know, so what I was doing there was just purely playing with feel and rhythm, because rhythm and feel are two sides of the same coin. If you can get good feel, then everything else that you're going to play makes more sense. And if you don't have a good feel, you can play all the most brilliant shit, and it's going to sound horrible. So it's so important. That's a little bit of an easier thing to just jump into because you just naturally, like, you have to get it, and you get it in every context, and if you don't have good feel, you're sort of pushed into it. But we all kind of, even I, like, tend to rush, and what we all do as musicians is if we can all lay back a little bit more, it'll probably feel a little bit better.
Yep.
So let's try a couple things now. Unless, do you have any questions about that?
About feel specifically, or about what we've just done.
Let's any of the topics I just covered.
It's all 100% makes sense to me. That is not true.
Oh, I was so excited for a second. Okay, fair enough.
No, I mean, this is all in the context of things that I've like thought about. Like the mode stuff is like stuff I've like tried to really understand like how it works, like stuff that I've thought about before, and like in the context of like the jams and improv stuff that I've done with you and outside of that, sort of similarly thinking through like how to best fit in to the structure, you know, I think is like the most important thing. Like what you're saying about feel, and you know, thank you for saying that. It's something that I do intuitively. Like I feel like that's like something that's like, okay, like I can understand that in a sort of maximalist way. I was thinking specifically, I don't know if you remember this, about when Valerie June came up to do the jam at Summit.
Yeah.
So Greg and I were in this jam at Summit, and there's this singer-songwriter, Valerie June, who's like Grammy Award-winning, incredible singer-songwriter. And she came up on stage, and she was like, it's blues in whatever key, let's say in G. You guys will get it. And she started playing, and the feel on stage was horrible. I mean, the worst. And none of us could figure out where she was. And Greg was on piano, and I think finally it hit him. And he was like, this isn't in 4, this is in 3. And he like ran over to the drummer, which I think was Keith, who's gonna be here tonight, and he started showing Keith the feel. And you can see, there's a video of it, you can see all of us understand what Greg was trying to do. And all of a sudden it went from like the worst jam of all time to like, boom, it started working.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's exactly what you're talking about with the feel.
Well, yeah, actually, that's that's one dimension of feel with it, which is time signature.
Sure, yeah, of course. It's not everything.
And it's actually easy to mistake one time signature for another if you have, like, she was playing guitar, and she was emphasizing the offbeats in a way where she was actually playing a built-in hemiola that everybody caught on as the actual time signature, but it wasn't the actual time signature. Right. And then it took a second to like figure out what the actual time signature was. But that is like, that's like, I guess, the macro feel. But the micro feel of like how do 2/8 notes sound next to each other,
right,
is the thing that people like Herbie Hancock have mastered. And Robert Glasper, like last night I was standing right next to him watching his hands the whole time and just studying everything he was doing. And he played so little. He played like these little nuggets of phrases that had perfect, amazing laid-back feel. And it was just the most beautiful, brilliant thing ever. Like the whole night. He was like so minimalist. But the feel was impeccable. And you get that with Herbie too. And any of the great instrumentalists. It's like, it feels just the most, one of the most important things. So I want to loop it now back to that. So let's talk a little bit more about shapes, because I think you had some specific questions about it.
Well, it's more like the way that I think about shapes is it's literally chord shapes on a guitar, right? So I understand what you're talking about, shapes being like the chordal variation of the notes. But what I'm talking about is like this shape of a G on a guitar is the same as the shape of an E on a guitar. And if somebody says make it a seventh, I know that makes it a seventh. Like, does this make sense to you? Like, I know that you play some, like you do on a bass. Like, I feel like the thing, you know. So like when somebody's like play diminished, right? I have to think about like contextually, where does that, like, what does that shape look like?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And so I feel like that's like one of the things that I've like realized about the way that I play this instrument
Yeah.
is that that's the way that I think it through.
Yes.
And like inversions are just different shapes when you're playing guitar.
Okay,
Okay.
so I
Does this
believe
make sense?
it makes total sense.
Okay.
And
And
what-
same with scales, right? Like that's a shape
Yeah.
that I can move anywhere on the guitar. That's like an A pentatonic minor scale that could literally be moved to like as long as I know the root note, I know how to play that scale anywhere on the guitar because of the shape of that scale.
yes, that makes total sense. So there's a spectrum of understanding of any individual instrument that starts with like what's obvious physically on the instrument and ends with a universal understanding of melody and harmony.
Right.
On one side of the spectrum is like you don't know how to play your instrument. I'll play like right? That's a shape. And I you know, a child can do that because it's just like, okay, black keys do that, and it's a melody. It's a nice melody, but like it's the most basic thing that I could possibly do. And then the like, you know, then you have like on the other side of the spectrum, like Bach. Like that has nothing to do with the shapes that are available on the piano, right? The thing to be able to express yourself on an instrument, like, and take ideas that you internally have that are amalgamations of everything you've listened to that are like then go through your own brilliant mind and come out in some way. You want to get as far to that side of the spectrum as possible, away from the shapes that are native to the instrument. Like that is and that's also, on this side it sounds more amateur, on this side it sounds more professional. Always, like undoubtedly. And I've had this, I actually gave jazz guitar lessons to a guitarist as I was playing piano. I don't actually play guitar for a while. A guy named Eric, and this was years ago. And the main thing that made his playing just get so much better was getting completely away from all the native shapes that are natural to the guitar. The best music comes out of not being constrained by those shapes, and the only way to break out of those is to let go, like in your practice, let go of any context of what those shapes might be, and practice lines that are completely separate from the shapes of a guitar, which can often, like I practice, I transcribe like saxophone solos on the piano. I love Cannonball Adderley's solos.
Right.
And those don't lay out like a piano at all, right? And that's to break away from the natural pianistic ideas that would come out because of the shapes that the piano that are natural to the piano. Because that's a constraint. Being like focusing on the shapes of that are natural to the instrument is a constraint on your creativity. So I would recommend take that idea of like trying to utilize the shapes, and you can. I'm talking about one like very extreme of a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
But you can utilize them musically, and you know, it's just there's a very low ceiling to how motivically like brilliant you can be in the development of a solo just using the shapes that are natural to the guitar. Because as soon as you have an idea that breaks away from one of those shapes, your hand won't be able to execute it. You know? And those shapes are very specific. So you can repeat the shapes and you can have good feel. And actually, there are plenty of the greatest in history guitar players that actually do that.
Right.
But in my opinion, that like you look at the actual greatest, like Jimi Hendrix, for example, he doesn't do that. By no means does he just utilize the shapes of the guitar. He's using his thumb like on the like.
Yeah, but he does. I mean, like
Okay.
Jimi Hendrix solos are like 99% pentatonic minor scales. I mean, like I had a really funny. I mean, this is like full name drop moment, but I got a guitar lesson from Tom Morello
Okay.
from Rage Against the Machine, and I said to him, I really want to break away from just soloing pentatonic minor. and he said, "It was good enough for Hendrix. It's good enough for you." That was like a direct quote. But like he used his thumb because he was playing left-handed, and he was more comfortable making the shape this like A major shape than doing like a natural like a But I feel like he's still within the sort of like, I mean, he almost like created the idea that those are the shapes that you use as a rock guitarist.
Well, in his solos, though, he breaks far away from them. Like in the chords, he's using them very distinctly. But when he's like actually speaking through the guitar, it goes beyond that. I mean, I think like you're more familiar with.
I mean, I think like the thing that makes him incredible is feel. I mean, he's one of, if not the best rock guitarist of all time.
Yeah.
I'm not knocking Jimi Hendrix, but it's expressiveness. It's what you were talking about before, more than it is like extreme musicality, I think, and I think like that's like almost a difference. It's almost like the difference between the schools that you and I sort of came up in, right? In a way where like that like extreme musicality in rock music is like, it's like less of what people emphasize. Like I think Kurt Cobain is like an amazing example, and not just because that's why I picked up a guitar, but like he played power chords pretty exclusively. But like there's something very musical and expressive about the way that he did it and the melodies that go over it, and the fact that like there's these major and minor things that are, it's unclear what he's doing, but it's like from a musical perspective, a lot of it's very basic.
Kurt Cobain's melodies are actually, they're simple, but they're hyper complex. Like "Smells Like Teen Spirit" is a revert. Like you can invert it, and it's exactly the same. It's like I forgot what you, but the actual, and I'm not saying that he knew that he was doing that when he wrote the melody.
Yeah, no,
I'm sure he didn't. He was on heroin and whatever. He was just it was like complete intuitive. But Charlie Parker actually also was completely, out of it for a lot of the time that he was playing, and played the most brilliant shit in history. It doesn't just like but you listen to Bird's solos, and it's beautifully motivically consistent. It's not just, and it is very much not just using the tropes of what is laid out clearly on the saxophone. And I would argue we're gonna have to break down a Jimi Hendrix solo at some point, because
let's fucking go.
That will be really fun.
I think that'd be super
because
fun.
he does things that stretch the capabilities of the guitar like way beyond normal technicality, and uses really intense motivic development, like that you can write it out and circle and point and like make it's like, but not that he's thinking about it, because he was obviously intuitively doing that. But the reason you can break down the reasons that like you put his solo next to another guitarist's solo that seems like as fast and as like expressive and all of that, and you can clearly mathematically lay out why one is better than the other.
Sure. Well, I think fast is extremely overrated with guitar playing, personally. Yeah.
I mean, with anything really. Yeah. But that being said, I do think that if you want to stick with the shapes, the feel is the most important, and the melodic content is the most important. You can be very expressive with just a pentatonic scale. And actually, there are pianists who use mostly pentatonic scales too, and like even ones who use way other things but still lean into the pentatonics, like Chick Corea, for example, did that a ton. And when you're doing that, there's an intuitive sort of melodic thing that happens that's kind of hard to. It's hard to explain in a context like this of like what that actually means to have like a good pentatonic melody versus a bad pentatonic melody. And we could try, and I could go into it, but that might be not the best use of the time.
Yeah.
But you can make beautiful melodies out of a pentatonic scale. I would just urge you, when you're doing that, understand the mode that you're in and how to navigate different shapes within that mode that are not just the pentatonic scale.
Yeah, that's sort of like where I'm trying. That's like, I feel like I'm trying to get there. That's what I'm trying to do right now.
And the way to get there is pick a shape, an idea that you like from some song or some solo. Ideally, that's not a guitar solo, but it could even be a guitar solo. And then play that idea over different, like, you could play that idea over different modes and over different keys. Like, let's see. If we're to, like, so we're in the just anything like that, right? That like can you play that for me? The to the 6, to the 1, to the 5, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so now if I were to play that in C, now we switch the whole thing to, but play it exactly the same.
Play the same thing I was doing before.
No, play it in the new key, but play the same. Yep. And now let's also talk about feel. Lay it back a little bit more, okay? But still, yeah, still play it like, but play it with the same articulation. Yeah. All right, now an F. Flat, right? Almost. B flat, B flat.
B flat, I thought you said E
Oh
flat.
yeah, B flat.
Yeah.
Now E flat. So the idea of that is to break out of where you would play that normally on the guitar,
sure,
and then move it into different keys. And then you can move it into different modes. You could play it as a major, like here, right? Instead of the minor, start with the major. And then you could actually move in G, right? If we were, right? It's 3, 2, 1.
In G?
In G. And then 6, 1, 5. Yeah, but up the octave.
Yeah.
But see how it's not easy to immediately get that quite yet.
Right.
But by doing that, and then by the way, you take that and you move it. Now instead of starting on the 3, start it on the 7, like. Do different permutations of it, right? And you could even flip it upside down. You could go like. Or like, but that's where by taking those ideas and playing around with them and actually like hearing what that idea is, moving it around to different keys, doing different permutations within the same key, and that was just a random idea that I came up with, but pick something you really like. That's how you will allow your fingers to then, like, when your mind then has an idea of something else aside from what is just normally laid out on the guitar, you'll be able to execute it because you'll have this practice at taking an idea and creating different permutations of it, and having stretched the limits of your capabilities of like what you can actually play melodically on the guitar. And that's like a way to start with the shapes and then like break away from the shapes. You can take a shape that you're used to and that you like, but move it around into places that it would be unlikely. And the whole point of it is taking your muscle memory of your fingers and expanding the boundaries of what it naturally wants to do, so that then you can hear an idea that somebody else is playing. Maybe the sax player is playing a cool line and he's repeating it, and then you want to repeat it with him.
Yeah.
Right? That's like the most simple version. But the other version is like the sax player plays a cool line and you want to comp something behind him that makes sense. You'll hear what he's doing, you'll know what notes make sense with it, and then you can play something that accompanies it effectively.
Right. Cool.
Yeah. What other questions do you have?
I mean, what's our time look like?
I don't know. Are
what
we
time
done? It might be done. Yeah, 7:37. I guess the jam starts in 20 minutes, so maybe we should wrap it up. Do you want to like start with a little, or end with just like a little mini jam?
Sure. Yeah. We could do a maxi jam. I probably shouldn't ask what key we're in. I probably should figure it out.
Here, I'm gonna start it out.
This is cool. Thank you guys for being here. And thanks, Greg.
My pleasure, man. Nice. See if you catch where I'm going. Follow me here. Nice, man. Great.
Thank you so
Cool.
much, Greg. This
Thank
was
you, Jeff.
awesome.
It was great.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
thanks for thanks. I love, like, you and I have discussed this a lot, but like we sort of came together in this way where we were both coming from very different places.
Yeah.
And thank you for like giving me space to like be the thing that I love being, and also to watch you do your thing and be totally in awe of it. So
Thanks,
thank you.
man. It's beautiful. Music has a lot of different contexts and a lot of different purposes, but the main beautiful thing about it is that it brings people together. So
Yeah.
happy to be doing that.
Let's play music together.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Cool. All right, time for the jam. Yeah, man.